The sound of a garbage bag hitting polished hardwood echoed through the foyer like a gunshot. 17-year-old Brianna Foster stood frozen near the staircase, her heart pounding but her face completely still. Across from her, Catherine Whitmore pointed toward the bag with cold eyes and a smile that never reached her face. The air inside the Grand Connecticut home felt heavier than stone. "Pack your things," Catherine said. "You are done here." Brianna stared at the woman who had lived under the same roof for more than a decade. "This is my home," she answered quietly. Laughter slipped from Catherine's lips. "Your home? This was never your home. You were something your father brought into my life, and I tolerated it for years. Your father is gone. Now get out." Most people would have screamed. Some would have cried. Others might have begged. Brianna did none of those things. She simply looked at Catherine and spoke 2 words. "I understand." The answer surprised everyone, even Catherine. There was no anger in her voice, no tears, only a calmness that felt strangely powerful. Years later, that same doorway would witness a completely different scene. But on that day, Brianna walked away, carrying only a garbage bag, a framed photograph, and a promise she never spoke aloud. To understand how everything began, you must first understand her father. Harold Foster was the kind of man people remembered long after he left a room. He stood tall with deep brown skin, a confident posture, and a warm smile that immediately earned trust. As one of the most respected investment bankers in Connecticut, he built a reputation through intelligence, discipline, and integrity. Yet nothing mattered more to him than his daughter. Every weekend, Harold took Brianna with him to visit homes across Fairfield County. While other children spent Saturdays watching cartoons, Brianna wandered through open houses. She touched walls, studied ceilings, and stared through windows as if each building carried secrets waiting to be discovered. When she was only 4 years old, she walked into a colonial home and announced that it had good bones. Harold laughed so hard he nearly spilled his coffee. The older she became, the more obvious her talent appeared. She carried sketchbooks everywhere. Instead of drawing princesses or superheroes, she filled pages with floor plans and property designs. Hallways connected perfectly. Rooms flowed naturally. Even before learning technical terms, she instinctively understood structure and space. Harold noticed everything. He began teaching her the language of real estate, mortgage, equity, appraisal, investment. Most children would have become bored after 10 minutes. Brianna absorbed every lesson like dry soil absorbing rain. By 16, she could analyze a property listing faster than many professionals. For her birthday, Harold gave her a real estate textbook. Inside the cover, he wrote 6 words that would shape the rest of her life. "Build something they cannot take from you." Brianna read those words repeatedly. Every night before sleeping, she opened the book and traced the letters with her fingers. When Harold married Catherine Whitmore, Brianna was still a little girl grieving the loss of her biological mother. Harold believed he was bringing stability back into their lives. Catherine appeared polished, sophisticated, and charming. She knew how to impress wealthy families and navigate elite social circles. From the outside, she looked like the perfect addition to the family. The reality proved very different. Catherine never shouted at Brianna while Harold lived. She never raised a hand against her. Her cruelty arrived quietly through 1,000 small decisions. Her own son received opportunities, privileges, and expensive gifts. Brianna received excuses. Catherine forgot birthdays, ignored achievements, and introduced her as Harold's daughter with a pause that always felt intentional. Brianna noticed every slight. She recognized every difference. Still, she remained silent because she loved her father more than she loved her own comfort. Harold seemed happy, and she refused to place him between the 2 people he cared about most. Then everything changed. Harold died suddenly from a heart attack. One ordinary morning became the worst day of Brianna's life. The foundation beneath her world collapsed without warning. She sat in a school counselor's office, staring at a wall while grief tore through her chest. Nothing felt real anymore. Only weeks later, Catherine revealed who she truly was. Movers entered the house while Brianna attended track practice. By the time she returned home, boxes filled her bedroom. Her father's shoes still rested near the back door. His scent still lingered in the hallway. Yet her belongings were already being removed. Standing in the foyer, Catherine delivered the speech Brianna would never forget. Her words cut deeper than any blade. When it ended, Brianna picked up her garbage bag, grabbed a photograph of her father, and walked toward the door. Outside, the evening sky hung grey above the neighborhood. A cold wind moved through the trees. Brianna climbed into a waiting taxi without looking back. As the car pulled away from the only home she had ever known, she opened her sketchbook to a blank page. With steady hands, she wrote 3 simple words: "I will return." The taxi rolled through the streets of Bridgeport beneath a sky covered with low grey clouds. Rain threatened from above, but never arrived. Brianna sat quietly in the back seat, her garbage bag resting beside her feet, and her father's photograph balanced carefully on her lap. Every mile carried her farther from the life she had known and closer to a future she could not yet imagine. When the taxi finally stopped in front of a small yellow house, she stared through the window for several seconds. The neighborhood looked nothing like Fairfield County. There were no grand driveways or manicured gardens, sidewalks cracked beneath years of neglect. The smell of fried food drifted from a nearby corner store. Cars parked tightly along the street. Life here felt harder, but somehow more honest. Her grandmother opened the front door before Brianna reached the porch. Loretta Barnes stood barely 5 feet tall, but she carried herself like someone twice her size. Years of hospital work had left her hands rough and her knees damaged, yet her eyes remained sharp and fearless. Loretta looked at the garbage bag. Then she looked at Brianna. She asked no questions. "Come inside, baby girl." Those 4 words nearly broke the wall Brianna had built around her emotions. Nearly, but not completely. She followed her grandmother through the narrow hallway and into a modest house filled with worn furniture and familiar warmth. That night, Brianna sat on a twin bed inside a room smaller than Catherine's dressing closet. The mattress sagged toward the middle. Thin walls carried sounds from neighboring apartments. Outside the lone window stood a chain-link fence beside an overflowing dumpster. She placed Harold's photograph on the nightstand and stared at it. The smile in the picture looked exactly the same. For several minutes, she imagined hearing his voice. Then a gentle knock interrupted her thoughts. Loretta entered, carrying a cup of hot tea. She lowered herself carefully onto the edge of the bed. "Your father gave you 2 things nobody can take away," she said. Brianna looked up. "Your brains and your backbone." The old woman pointed a finger toward her. "Do not let that woman steal either one." "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Tomorrow we figure out the rest." The next morning brought another painful discovery. Catherine had already removed Brianna from her private school enrollment. One phone call had erased years of attendance. A week later, Brianna entered Bridgeport Central High School. The building felt unfamiliar. Students moved through crowded hallways. Nobody knew her story. Nobody cared where she came from. She carried her backpack through the front entrance and reported to the guidance office. The counselor reviewed her academic records and raised both eyebrows. "You transferred from Fairfield Academy?" "Yes, that school rarely loses students during senior year." "Family situation." The counselor studied her for a moment but asked no further questions. Brianna completed the remainder of her coursework with relentless focus. While other students counted the days until graduation, she buried herself in assignments. Books became her escape. Excellence became her shield. 2 months later, she graduated with honors. The ceremony took place inside a crowded gymnasium decorated with blue and gold banners. Families filled the seats carrying flowers and cameras. In the 3rd row sat Loretta. She wore her best church dress, lavender with white buttons. Her knees ached whenever she stood, but she rose anyway and applauded louder than anyone else in the building. For a brief moment, Brianna felt proud. Not because she graduated, because she survived. Summer arrived. 3 months after leaving Catherine's house, Brianna decided to make one final request. She dialed Catherine's number. The call connected on the 3rd ring. "Well," Catherine said, "this is unexpected. I only want 2 things." A pause followed. "Go ahead. Dad's watch and the real estate textbook he gave me." Silence, then a laugh. Small, dismissive, cruel. "I donated all of Harold's things months ago." Brianna gripped the phone tighter. "What?" "Goodwill. Everything went there. You should have taken what you wanted before leaving." The line disconnected. Brianna remained seated at her grandmother's kitchen table. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead. A faucet dripped steadily nearby. The clock continued ticking. But she heard none of it. The watch was gone. The textbook was gone. The last physical pieces of her father had vanished. For the first time since leaving Fairfield County, tears threatened to appear. She refused to let them. Instead, she reached into her backpack and removed a 99-cent notebook purchased from a discount store. The cover displayed a simple black and white marble pattern. She opened the first page. Then she wrote a title in large capital letters, "Properties I Will Own." Below it, she listed her first entry, the Connecticut Colonial, the 6-bedroom house Catherine had stolen. The notebook became her roadmap. Every address she admired entered those pages. Every dream found a place there. Every setback strengthened her determination. While Brianna built plans inside a cheap notebook, Catherine spent money as if it would never disappear. She renovated the colonial house from top to bottom. New marble countertops replaced older surfaces. Expensive landscaping transformed the yard. Fresh paint covered walls, once decorated with Harold's photographs. She erased him. Or at least she believed she had. Publicly, Catherine thrived. Charity events welcomed her. Country clubs admired her. Wealthy neighbors praised her generosity. Privately, she continued treating people as disposable pieces in a game she expected to win forever. Meanwhile, Brianna looked toward a different future. One afternoon, a large envelope arrived in Loretta's mailbox. University acceptance, scholarship confirmation, a full opportunity. As Brianna opened the letter, sunlight streamed through the kitchen window. For the first time since losing her father, genuine hope entered the room. She smiled. And inside the notebook, resting beside her acceptance letter, she added another sentence. "This is only the beginning." College began with exhaustion. Most students arrived carrying excitement, expectations, and family support. Brianna arrived carrying determination. She moved into a dorm room barely larger than the bedroom she had occupied at her grandmother's house. The walls were plain, the furniture looked worn, the mattress felt thin. Yet when she closed the door behind her, she smiled. For the first time since being forced from her home, she felt ownership over her future. The university honored her scholarship. Tuition disappeared as a concern. Everything else remained her responsibility. Rent, food, books, transportation. Nothing came easily. Brianna enrolled in business administration with a concentration in real estate finance. She studied while most students socialized. She worked while others relaxed. Every morning began before sunrise. At 5 o'clock, she tied on an apron and reported to a campus coffee shop. The smell of fresh coffee filled the air while students stumbled through the doors searching for caffeine and energy. By 8 o'clock, she rushed to classes. Lectures filled her afternoons. Property management work consumed her evenings. Most nights ended after 10. Sleep rarely lasted longer than 5 hours. The schedule would have crushed many people. For Brianna, it became fuel. Whenever exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her, she remembered standing in that foyer with a garbage bag. Whenever doubt appeared, she remembered Catherine's laughter. Whenever loneliness arrived, she remembered Harold's words. "Build something they cannot take from you." Those 6 words followed her everywhere. Years passed quickly. Professors noticed her discipline. Classmates noticed her intelligence. Recruiters noticed her results. She graduated near the top of her class nearly a year ahead of schedule. On graduation day, Loretta sat proudly among hundreds of families. The old woman's hair had turned completely silver, her knees hurt more than before, but her applause remained strong. After the ceremony, she wrapped Brianna in a tight embrace. "Your daddy would be smiling today." The words nearly brought tears to Brianna's eyes. Instead, she smiled. "I hope so." The following month, she accepted an internship at a commercial real estate firm in Hartford. The office occupied the upper floors of a modern glass building overlooking the city. Everything appeared polished and professional. Appearances proved deceptive. On her first day, a senior broker approached her. "You must be the new receptionist." "No." Brianna extended her hand. "I am one of the interns." The man's smile disappeared. Embarrassment flashed across his face. Moments like that became common. Clients complimented how articulate she sounded. Co-workers questioned whether her success came from special treatment. People commented on her hair. Others suggested she smile more because it made clients comfortable. Each remark landed like a small stone. Alone, none seemed significant. Together, they built a mountain. Brianna never argued, never complained, never wasted energy defending herself. She simply worked harder. Within weeks, her performance surpassed every other intern. Property evaluations, market analysis, investment projections. She mastered them all. The office gradually learned something important. Underestimating Brianna Foster was expensive. One afternoon, during a coffee break, she met a man named Gerald Whitaker. Gerald worked as a semi-retired real estate attorney who consulted with the company twice each week. He was in his 60s, with grey hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and a calm voice. Unlike many others, he treated Brianna with immediate respect. Their conversations began casually. Real estate, markets, property law, life. Then one afternoon, everything changed. They sat together in the break room, discussing investment strategies. Gerald paused after hearing her last name. Foster? Brianna nodded, yes. Gerald slowly lowered his coffee cup. Your father wasn't Harold Foster, was he? The question instantly captured her attention. You knew him? The older man looked away. For several seconds, he remained silent. Then he sighed deeply. I knew of him. Something about his expression felt strange, heavy, regretful. Gerald folded his hands together. Many years ago, I worked at the law firm handling his estate. The room suddenly felt smaller. Brianna leaned forward. What does that mean? Gerald removed his glasses. It means your father left you an inheritance. The words hit her like thunder. An inheritance? 40% of his estate. The coffee machine hummed quietly nearby. Nobody else occupied the room. Brianna stared at him. I never received anything. I know. Gerald looked genuinely ashamed, because someone made sure you never would. The conversation that followed changed everything. Gerald explained how Harold had created a trust. Educational funding, financial support, security, a future, all documented, all legitimate, all buried. Brianna listened without interruption. The inheritance had vanished before she ever knew it existed. The people responsible ensured the paperwork disappeared. Years passed, deadlines expired, opportunities vanished, and she remained unaware. Anger should have consumed her. Instead, something else emerged. Clarity. She understood exactly what kind of person Catherine truly was. More importantly, she understood something about herself. Everything she accomplished belonged entirely to her. No trust fund built her success. No inheritance paid her bills. No hidden fortune rescued her. She built every step herself. Gerald watched her carefully. You have every reason to be furious. Maybe. Brianna looked out the break room window. Below, Hartford traffic moved steadily through the afternoon sunlight. Maybe later. For now, I have work to do. That evening, she returned to her apartment, carrying a new sense of purpose. The notebook from Bridgeport still sat inside a desk drawer. She opened it. The pages contained years of goals and dreams, addresses, properties, plans, promises. Near the top of the first page remained the original entry, the Connecticut Colonial. Brianna stared at the words. Then she smiled, because for the first time, reclaiming that house no longer felt impossible. It felt inevitable. Before going to bed, she added a new sentence beneath the address. They stole my inheritance. They will never steal my future. Outside her window, city lights glittered beneath the darkness. Somewhere far away, Catherine Whitmore slept comfortably inside a house she believed would belong to her forever. She had no idea that the foundation beneath her life had already begun to crack. Brianna's first property looked nothing like the homes she once toured with her father. The building sat on a neglected street in Bridgeport. Its windows were boarded, paint peeled from the exterior walls, weeds pushed through cracks in the sidewalk. The roof leaked whenever rain arrived. Most investors drove past without slowing down. Brianna stopped and saw opportunity. She purchased the property with nearly every dollar she had saved. Friends called her reckless. Co-workers called her inexperienced. One banker quietly suggested she lower her expectations. Brianna smiled and signed the paperwork anyway. The first months were brutal. Contractors quoted prices far above market value. Suppliers delivered materials late. Unexpected repairs appeared behind every wall. One mistake cost thousands. A second mistake cost even more. After that, she learned quickly. She spent evenings watching renovation videos. Weekends disappeared inside construction sites. She learned roofing, plumbing basics, permits, inspections, and negotiations. By the time the property sold, Brianna earned a modest profit. Nothing life-changing, but enough to buy another building, then another, and another. Years passed. Her company slowly took shape. Cornerstone Holdings. The name reflected exactly what she wanted to build. Strong foundations, lasting value, real opportunity. While other investors chased luxury developments, Brianna focused on forgotten neighborhoods. She bought distressed properties, she repaired them, she rented some, she sold others. Every dollar returned to the business. She drove practical vehicles, lived modestly, avoided attention. Success arrived quietly. By 32, Cornerstone Holdings controlled dozens of properties across Connecticut. Local business journals noticed her growth. Industry leaders noticed her discipline. Competitors noticed her results. The young woman once removed from a mansion with a garbage bag now controlled millions in real estate assets. Yet she rarely spoke about her past. When reporters asked personal questions, she redirected conversations toward business. When people praised her accomplishments, she credited mentors and hard work. She never mentioned Catherine, never mentioned inheritance, never mentioned revenge. Meanwhile, Catherine's world moved in the opposite direction. At first, the decline appeared invisible. Expensive homes still hosted elegant parties. Designer clothes still filled closets. Country club invitations still arrived. From the outside, everything seemed perfect. Inside, cracks were spreading. Tyler became the first major problem. After college, he launched a luxury nightclub. The grand opening attracted crowds. Champagne flowed, music echoed through the building. Photographers captured smiling guests. For one evening, everything looked successful. The excitement vanished quickly. Attendance dropped. Bills increased. Vendors demanded payment. Within months, the business collapsed. Catherine covered the debt. She wrote a large check and called it a temporary setback. Tyler tried again, this time with a clothing company. Another failure followed. More money disappeared. Another check solved the immediate problem. Then came a cryptocurrency investment. Promises of enormous returns tempted Tyler into risking everything. The project collapsed. His remaining trust fund vanished. Once again, he returned home, older, bitter, unemployed. Catherine watched her son drift through life without direction. For brief moments, she saw uncomfortable truths. Tyler lacked discipline. Tyler lacked resilience. Tyler lacked ambition. Most of all, Tyler lacked consequences. She had protected him from every mistake. Now those mistakes surrounded him. At the same time, Catherine's finances deteriorated. Property taxes increased. Loans accumulated. Credit cards reached their limits. Maintenance costs grew larger each year. The colonial house remained beautiful from a distance, but age quietly attacked its foundation. Repairs were postponed. Bills were ignored. Debt expanded. The situation worsened when a major mortgage payment approached. The amount due exceeded anything Catherine could comfortably afford. She called advisors. She contacted financial planners. She explored refinancing options. Nothing worked. The numbers refused to cooperate. One attorney finally delivered the truth. If you cannot make this payment, foreclosure becomes inevitable. The word shocked her. Foreclosure. The possibility seemed absurd. This was her house, her status, her identity. Yet mathematics showed no mercy. Months later, official notices arrived. Legal documents appeared in mailboxes. Deadlines passed. Warnings multiplied. Still, Catherine convinced herself that someone would rescue her. Someone always had before. No rescue came. The foreclosure process moved forward. The property eventually reached public auction. Rain fell lightly that morning. Few people paid attention. For Catherine, the event felt too distant to acknowledge. For one particular company, it represented a valuable opportunity. Cornerstone Holdings submitted an offer. The paperwork was clean. The funding was secure. The transaction moved smoothly. Hours later, ownership changed. A house once worth everything to Catherine now belonged to someone else. When her attorney called with the news, she listened in stunned silence. Who bought it? Cornerstone Holdings. The name meant nothing to her. At first, find out who owns the company. Her attorney promised to investigate. Days later, a formal notice arrived, 30 days to vacate. Professional language, clear instructions, everything legal. Attached to the notice was an invitation. The new owner wished to conduct a property assessment in person. Catherine read the letter twice, then a third time. Something about it irritated her deeply. She called the company immediately. A receptionist answered politely, "I want to speak with whoever owns this business." "I'm sorry, ma'am. Ms. Foster is unavailable at the moment." The room suddenly felt colder. Catherine tightened her grip on the phone. "What did you say?" "Miss Brianna Foster." The words landed like a hammer. For several seconds, Catherine could not breathe. The call ended. Silence filled the kitchen. Outside, wind rattled tree branches against the windows. Inside, Catherine stood motionless. Foster. Brianna Foster. The name echoed through her thoughts. Slowly, she walked toward her office. Her hands trembled as she opened a laptop. A search engine displayed results almost instantly. Business articles, magazine features, industry awards, photographs, success stories. And there she was. The girl she once threw out had become a powerful real estate executive. Brianna stood in front of renovated buildings, wearing a navy blazer and an expression of calm confidence. The transformation felt impossible. Catherine stared at the screen. Not guilt, not regret, not shame. What she felt was anger. Raw anger. She's doing this to humiliate me. The thought consumed her. She convinced herself the purchase was personal, that Brianna had spent years planning revenge, that everything revolved around her. Outside, evening shadows stretched across the property. Inside, Catherine opened her closet and selected her finest clothes. If Brianna Foster wanted a meeting, she would get one. Catherine intended to remind everyone exactly who she believed she still was. What she did not realize was that the next meeting would change both of their lives forever. Tuesday morning arrived wrapped in crisp autumn air. Golden leaves drifted across sidewalks as sunlight spilled over the neighborhood. The sky looked impossibly blue, but the beauty of the day felt disconnected from the tension gathering around the colonial house. At exactly 10 o'clock, a black SUV turned into the driveway. The vehicle moved slowly, deliberately, confidently. The engine stopped. The driver's door opened. Brianna Foster stepped out. She wore a navy blazer and a white blouse. No flashy jewelry, no expensive accessories displayed for attention, only a leather portfolio tucked beneath her arm. Everything about her projected calm authority. She looked nothing like the 17-year-old girl who had left the property carrying a garbage bag. Behind her walked Denise Caldwell, her business partner, carrying digital property records. A city housing inspector followed close behind, holding a clipboard filled with documentation forms. They approached the house together. Before Brianna reached the porch, the front door opened. Catherine Whitmore appeared. She looked prepared for battle. Designer jacket, diamond earrings, perfect makeup, perfect posture. For a brief moment, she appeared exactly like the woman who had controlled that house for years. Her eyes moved slowly across Brianna. "So," Catherine finally said, "you actually came." "Good morning, Catherine." Brianna's voice remained calm. "We are here for the property assessment." The inspector stepped forward politely. The business partner offered a professional greeting. Neither received a response. Catherine's attention never left Brianna. "You are not entering my house." Brianna stopped at the bottom of the steps. "Actually, it is no longer your house." The statement landed like a punch. For several seconds, neither woman moved. Wind carried fallen leaves across the driveway. Birds chirped somewhere in the distance. The world continued normally while decades of resentment stood facing itself. Catherine recovered first. "I spent years caring for you." Brianna remained silent. "I gave you a roof over your head." Still silence. "Your father would be ashamed of what you are doing." That finally earned a response. Not an emotional reaction, just a quiet answer. "My father wanted many things." Brianna opened her portfolio. One by one, she placed documents onto the porch railing. Foreclosure records, title transfers, auction confirmations, ownership certificates. Every page carried official stamps. Every page carried legal authority. Every page confirmed the same reality. The house belonged to Brianna, legally, completely, unequivocally. My father wanted me protected, Brianna continued. He wanted my future secured. He wanted promises honored. The words remained controlled, measured, powerful. Then she looked directly into Catherine's eyes. You told me years ago this was never my house. The silence that followed felt enormous. You were right. Catherine blinked. Brianna continued. It was never mine then. Her voice hardened slightly. But I earned it now. The sentence struck harder than any insult ever could. Catherine's hand slipped against the doorframe. For the first time, uncertainty appeared on her face. At that moment, footsteps echoed from upstairs. Tyler emerged. His hair looked uncombed. Dark circles surrounded tired eyes. He stopped immediately after seeing Brianna. Recognition flashed across his face, then embarrassment, then fear. 15 years had passed, yet both of them remembered exactly what happened. Tyler remembered standing silently at the top of the stairs. Brianna remembered it too. Nobody mentioned it, not yet. The inspector began documenting the property. Photographs captured cracked pavement, damaged gutters, foundation concerns, water stains, deferred maintenance. Years of neglect suddenly became visible. Each camera click sounded like another chapter closing. Catherine watched helplessly. The house she once displayed proudly now revealed every hidden flaw. Meanwhile, Brianna entered the property, room by room, hallway by hallway. Everything was professional. Everything was business. The dining room, the kitchen, the living room, the office. Every area received inspection notes. Eventually, she climbed the staircase. Her footsteps slowed near a particular door, a small bedroom. The room where Catherine moved her before throwing her out. The room where childhood ended. Brianna opened the door. Boxes filled the space now. Unused furniture sat covered in dust. The room looked forgotten. She stood there briefly, only a few seconds. Then she closed the door and continued forward. Business first, always business first. The inspection lasted nearly an hour. By the end, Catherine's confidence had eroded completely. Her posture weakened, her voice trembled, her anger transformed into desperation. Brianna. The name sounded unfamiliar coming from her. Can we talk privately? About what? An arrangement. The word hung in the air. I can pay rent. Brianna remained expressionless. Just give me time. How much time? 6 months. The answer came immediately. You had 15 years. The room fell silent. Catherine stared at her. Then she made a mistake. She mentioned Harold again. Your father would want me to stay. For the first time all morning, emotion crossed Brianna's face. A brief flash. Pain. Then steel. My father wanted me to receive my inheritance. Catherine froze. He wanted me to have educational funding. Her face paled. He wanted me to receive the letter he left behind. Now Catherine looked genuinely frightened. What letter? Brianna closed the portfolio. We can discuss that in court. The words changed everything. Court. The possibility had never felt real until that moment. Catherine's breathing quickened. Her hands shook visibly. Panic replaced strategy. Without warning, she grabbed her phone. Moments later, she called the police. She reported trespassers, claimed strangers occupied her property, claimed ownership rights, claimed injustice. 12 minutes later, patrol cars arrived. Officers listened patiently. They reviewed documents. They verified ownership records. Then reality arrived. The property belonged to Brianna Foster. Legally, officially, completely. Catherine stood speechless. The officers apologized politely and departed. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then something inside Catherine finally broke. She stepped outside, onto the front lawn, into full view of neighbors. And she began screaming. The sound echoed across the street. Doors opened, curtains moved. People emerged onto porches, phones appeared, cameras started recording. Across the road, an elderly neighbor quietly lifted her smartphone. She remembered a taxi leaving that house many years earlier. She remembered the young girl carrying a garbage bag. Now she watched history reverse itself. And as the recording continued, the first pieces of a much larger story began spreading far beyond that quiet Connecticut street. The video appeared online before sunset. A neighbor uploaded the recording with a simple caption. This happened on my street today. Nothing more, no explanation, no backstory, no names, just 2 minutes of a well-dressed woman screaming on a front lawn while another woman stood calmly on a porch holding a leather portfolio. By morning, thousands had watched it. By evening, the number climbed dramatically. People shared it across social media platforms. Questions filled comment sections. Who was screaming? Who owned the house? What happened? Speculation spread quickly. Some viewers sympathized with Catherine. Others admired Brianna's composure. Nobody knew the full story. Yet, the internet has a habit of finding answers. Within days, amateur investigators connected names to property records. Property records led to business filings. Business filings led to Cornerstone Holdings. Cornerstone Holdings led directly to Brianna Foster. Soon, reporters began making phone calls. One journalist, Andrea Simmons, refused to settle for rumors. She reviewed legal filings, property transfers, public records, old newspaper archives. She interviewed former neighbors, former employees, community members. Slowly, a complete picture emerged. The truth proved far more powerful than the viral video. Andrea eventually contacted Brianna. At first, Brianna declined every request. She had spent years building a business, not a public image. But Denise encouraged her to reconsider. The story already exists. People will tell it with or without you. Brianna thought about it carefully. Then she agreed. The article appeared on a Sunday morning. Everything changed. The piece detailed Harold Foster's death, the expulsion, the garbage bag, the taxi ride, Loretta's house, the scholarship, the jobs, the company, the foreclosure, the reunion. The article never exaggerated. It never needed to. Facts carried enough weight on their own. Readers responded immediately. Messages poured in from across the country. People shared stories about family betrayals, lost inheritances, broken promises, parents who abandoned children, children who rebuilt their lives anyway. Brianna's story became something larger than one house. It became a symbol. Meanwhile, Catherine's carefully constructed reputation collapsed. The country club suspended her membership. Several charity organizations quietly distanced themselves. Old friends stopped returning calls. Invitations disappeared. The social world she once controlled suddenly closed its doors. For the first time in years, she experienced consequences. Yet the public embarrassment was only the beginning. While news outlets focused on headlines, Gerald Whitaker focused on evidence. The retired attorney spent weeks reviewing records. Old documents resurfaced. Archived files reappeared. Forgotten communications returned to light. Eventually, he walked into Brianna's office carrying several boxes. His expression looked serious. "What is all this?" "Proof." Brianna leaned forward. "Proof of what?" Gerald placed a folder on her desk. "Proof that your father tried to protect you." The room fell silent. Outside the window, rain tapped softly against the glass. Gerald opened the folder. Inside sat copies of old correspondence. Emails, legal notes, internal memoranda. One message immediately captured Brianna's attention. The email was sent shortly after Harold's funeral. The language felt cold, calculated, intentional. It discussed removing complications, eliminating obstacles, ensuring matters remained clean. Brianna understood exactly what those words meant. Someone wanted her erased from the equation. Gerald opened another file. This one contained handwritten instructions, her father's handwriting. The sight instantly tightened her chest. She had not seen those familiar letters in years. Harold explicitly described financial protections for his daughter, educational funding, inheritance percentages, trust arrangements, everything documented clearly, everything legitimate, everything ignored. Brianna stared at the pages. For years she believed opportunities never existed. Now she realized they had been stolen. The discovery hurt more than she expected. Not because of the money, because of the intention. Her father had tried. He truly tried. Someone simply prevented his wishes from reaching her. Gerald remained quiet. Then he opened one final box. Inside sat a sealed envelope. A single name appeared on the front. Brianna. Her breath caught immediately. She recognized the handwriting. Harold's. The envelope had never been opened. Never delivered. Never seen. For years it remained hidden. Waiting. Brianna reached for it carefully. Her hands trembled. The room felt smaller. The air felt heavier. Everything slowed. For a long moment, she simply stared at the envelope. 15 years. 15 years of silence. 15 years of unanswered questions. 15 years without hearing from her father, and now his final words rested inches away. Gerald stood quietly. "Take your time," Brianna nodded. She broke the seal. Folded paper slid into her hands. The familiar handwriting filled the page. She began reading. The first lines brought an immediate wave of emotion. Harold wrote about pride, about belief, about confidence in the person she would become. Tears finally appeared. Not many, just enough. Enough to remind her Mariana that beneath the business success, beneath the strength, beneath the discipline, she was still a daughter who missed her father. As rain continued falling outside the office windows, Brianna reached the final page. There, near the bottom, Harold repeated the same 6 words he once wrote inside her lost textbook. "Build something they cannot take from you." She stared at the sentence for a long time. Then she noticed something else, a final handwritten note beneath it. A note that changed everything. And the moment Gerald read it, he looked up and said only 3 words. "This changes everything." The office remained silent except for the sound of rain striking the windows. Gerald stood across the desk while Brianna continued reading her father's letter. The final paragraph felt different from everything before it. More personal, more urgent, more revealing. Harold explained that he had concerns, not suspicions, not accusations, concerns. He admitted noticing patterns inside the household, small things, unequal treatment, cold behavior, subtle exclusions. He never imagined those issues would grow into something larger, but he documented his observations anyway. Then came the sentence that changed everything. "If anything happens to me unexpectedly, investigate immediately." Brianna read it twice, then a third time. Her pulse quickened. Gerald noticed. "You see it now." She slowly lowered the letter. He knew something was wrong. "Not everything," Gerald replied, "but enough to leave instructions." The retired attorney sat down. "For years, I believed the inheritance documents were the strongest evidence. This letter changes the picture completely." Outside, thunder rolled across the city. Brianna stared at her father's handwriting. A strange mixture of grief and peace settled inside her. For years, she wondered whether Harold would have protected her if he had known the truth. Now she had her answer. He tried, he truly tried. The realization healed a wound she had carried since childhood. Several weeks later, legal action began. Gerald assembled a team. Documents were organized. Evidence was catalogued. Witnesses were identified. Every file revealed another layer of deception. The deeper they looked, the worse the story became. Financial records showed money moving through accounts connected to Harold's estate. Emails revealed coordinated decisions. Internal communications exposed deliberate efforts to prevent Brianna from learning the truth. Nobody could dismiss it as misunderstanding. Nobody could call it an accident. The pattern was clear. Meanwhile, Catherine's situation continued deteriorating. News coverage refused to disappear. Every attempt to defend herself created new criticism. Every interview raised additional questions. Every explanation sounded weaker than the last. One afternoon, she sat alone inside her temporary apartment. The space felt painfully small compared to the colonial house. A single window overlooked a parking lot. Traffic noise replaced birdsong. The silence felt different now. Not peaceful, empty. Tyler occupied the second bedroom. Most days he remained inside, avoiding neighbors, avoiding conversations, avoiding responsibility. The video had damaged him too. Potential employers recognized his name. Friends stopped inviting him places. People whispered. Some laughed, others judged. For the first time in his life, Tyler experienced public consequences. One evening, he sat across from Catherine at the kitchen table. The television played softly in the background. Neither touched their food. "Do you think we should apologize?" The question surprised Catherine. Apologize? To Brianna. The room immediately grew tense. Catherine set down her fork. For what? Tyler stared at her. The answer seemed obvious. For everything. Catherine looked away. The conversation ended there because deep down she still believed she was the victim. That belief prevented reflection, prevented accountability, prevented growth. Weeks later, attorneys gathered for a pre-trial conference. The atmosphere felt professional but tense. Evidence folders lined conference tables. Legal teams reviewed documents. Court officials moved between rooms. When Catherine's attorney finished reviewing the complete case file, his expression changed dramatically. He requested a private meeting immediately. Inside a small conference room, he closed the door. Then he delivered difficult news. "You cannot win this case." Catherine stared at him. "What are you talking about? The evidence is overwhelming." She shook her head. "No." The attorney slid several documents across the table. Emails, trust instructions, financial records, the letter. Each page weakened her position further. Each page increased her exposure. Each page moved the case closer to disaster. If this reaches a full trial, the outcome could be catastrophic. For the first time, fear appeared. Real fear, not embarrassment, not frustration. Fear. The kind that arrives when denial finally collapses. Several days later, settlement negotiations began. The process moved quickly. Both sides understood the facts. Both sides understood the risks. Both sides understood what public testimony would reveal. Eventually, terms were reached. Financial restitution, formal acknowledgements, permanent legal restrictions, professional consequences for those involved. The agreement represented far more than money. It represented accountability. When Gerald called Brianna with the final details, she listened quietly. After years of uncertainty, years of questions, years of wondering whether justice existed, the answer finally arrived. The truth mattered. The truth survived. The truth won. Yet the most surprising reaction came afterward. She felt no celebration, no victory dance, no desire to gloat. Instead, she felt relief. Like a weight she carried for half her life had finally disappeared. That evening, Brianna visited her grandmother. Loretta sat on the porch wrapped in a blanket. The sunset painted the sky with orange and purple colors. They talked quietly, shared tea, shared memories, shared peace. Eventually, Loretta smiled. "Your father would be proud." Brianna looked toward the fading sunlight, maybe for the business. Loretta laughed softly. "Not the business." Brianna turned toward her. "Then what?" The old woman reached over and squeezed her hand. "Because after everything they did, you still chose to become a good woman." The words stayed with Brianna long after she drove home. That night, standing alone inside her office, she unfolded Harold's letter one more time. As she reread the final page, a small folded attachment slipped from the envelope and landed on her desk. Confused, she picked it up. The paper had been hidden between two pages. She slowly unfolded it. Then her eyes widened because it wasn't a letter. It was a property address, an address connected to a secret her father never had the chance to tell her. The paper felt fragile in Brianna's hands. She stared at the address written beneath her father's signature. No explanation, no instructions, just a location. A small property in Fairfield County. At first glance, the address meant nothing, yet Harold had hidden it inside his final letter. That fact alone made it important. The following morning, Brianna called Gerald. Within hours, both of them sat inside a conference room reviewing property records. Rain clouds drifted across the sky outside, while computer screens illuminated stacks of documents. Gerald searched quietly, then he stopped. "Interesting." Brianna leaned forward. "What is it?" "The property belongs to a trust." "Whose trust?" Gerald adjusted his glasses. "Your father's." The answer stunned her. "I thought everything was already discovered." "Apparently not." Further investigation revealed something remarkable. Years before his death, Harold had quietly purchased a small commercial building through a separate trust structure. The property generated rental income. The trust remained active, taxes had been paid consistently, maintenance records appeared current. Yet nobody connected the building to Harold's estate. Not Catherine, not her attorneys, not the probate court. Nobody. The property had effectively disappeared from public attention. For 15 years, it sat untouched, generating income, growing in value, waiting. Brianna drove to the location the next day. The building stood on a quiet street, surrounded by mature trees and brick storefronts. Nothing about it looked extraordinary. A bakery occupied one unit, a barber shop occupied another. Two offices operated upstairs. People entered and exited throughout the afternoon. Life continued normally. Yet standing across the street, Brianna felt strangely emotional. Her father had left behind one final gift, not because of its financial value, because it represented intention, hope, faith. Somehow, despite everything, Harold believed his daughter would eventually find it. A week later, ownership transferred legally into her control. The asset significantly increased her company's portfolio. But Brianna viewed it differently. This building was not an investment. It was a message, proof that her father never stopped trying to protect her. Meanwhile, news of the settlement continued spreading. Television segments discussed the inheritance case. Podcasts analyzed the legal implications. Business magazines praised Brianna's resilience. Requests for interviews arrived daily. She declined most of them. The attention felt uncomfortable. Success interested her more than publicity. One exception changed everything. A community development conference invited Brianna to speak. The audience consisted of entrepreneurs, students, non-profit leaders, and local officials. Normally, she avoided public speaking. This time, she accepted. The event took place inside a large convention center. Hundreds filled the seats. Spotlights illuminated the stage. As Brianna approached the podium, nervous energy filled the room. Many attendees already knew her story. They expected anger. They expected revenge. They expected a triumphant speech about defeating enemies. Instead, Brianna surprised everyone. She spoke about opportunity. She spoke about discipline. She spoke about neighborhoods often ignored by investors. She spoke about housing, education, ownership, responsibility. Most importantly, she spoke about choice. Every person experiences hardship, she said, but hardship does not get the final vote. We do. The audience listened carefully. Some took notes, others nodded quietly. The speech ended with a standing ovation. Not because of her success, because of her perspective. Afterward, dozens approached to thank her. One young woman stood out. She introduced herself as Maya, 20 years old, former foster youth, recently homeless, trying to attend college, trying to survive, trying to believe life could improve. Your story gave me hope. The simple sentence stayed with Brianna for days, then weeks. Eventually, it sparked an idea. An idea that refused to leave. One evening, she sat inside her office, reviewing plans for future acquisitions. The city lights glowed outside, traffic moved below, profit projections filled computer screens. Yet her attention remained elsewhere. She thought about Maya, about Loretta, about herself at 17, about young people with nowhere to go. The thought kept returning. What good is ownership if it only benefits the owner? Harold once taught her that property represented power. Perhaps power carried responsibility too. The next morning, Brianna scheduled a meeting with Denise and Gerald. The three gathered around a large conference table. Blueprints covered every surface. Financial reports sat stacked nearby. Denise noticed Brianna's expression immediately. You have an idea. A big one. Brianna smiled. Maybe. Gerald leaned back. Let's hear it. Brianna opened a folder. Inside were photographs of the Connecticut colonial house, the same house. The house where everything began. Denise frowned. You are not planning to sell it? No. Renovate it again? Not exactly. Brianna looked at both of them. Then she explained her vision. Job training programs, legal assistance, housing support, educational resources, safe transitional living spaces, a place where struggling families and vulnerable young adults could rebuild their lives. Silence filled the room after she finished. Gerald stared at the plans. Denise slowly smiled. The colonial house had once represented rejection, pain, loss. Now Brianna wanted to transform it into something entirely different. Hope, opportunity, healing. After several moments, Gerald finally spoke. Your father would love this. Brianna looked down at the blueprint. Maybe. Then she smiled softly. Or maybe this was exactly what he hoped I would do. The project moved forward immediately. Construction crews were hired. Design plans were approved. Renovations began. Months passed. Walls changed. Rooms transformed. New life slowly entered the building. And as the work progressed, Brianna received an unexpected phone call. The caller identified himself as a journalist. His voice sounded excited. "Ms. Foster, I think you should know something." "What is it?" The reporter paused. "Catherine Whitmore just requested an interview, and according to her statement, she plans to tell the world a completely different version of your story." The phone call arrived on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Brianna sat inside her office, reviewing renovation updates when the journalist delivered the news. Catherine Whitmore wanted an interview. Not a private conversation, not a statement through attorneys. A public interview, a televised interview. According to preliminary reports, she intended to tell her side of the story. Brianna thanked the reporter and ended the call. Then she laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was predictable. For years, Catherine had survived by controlling narratives. When facts became inconvenient, she reshaped them. When accountability appeared, she redirected blame. Nothing had changed. 2 weeks later, the interview aired. Millions watched. The host asked careful questions. Catherine offered careful answers. She described herself as misunderstood. She described herself as overwhelmed after Harold's death. She described difficult family circumstances, financial pressure, emotional confusion, poor decisions, regret, everything except the truth. The audience listened politely, until the host introduced documents, emails, court filings, settlement records. The interview changed instantly. Questions became sharper, answers became weaker. Catherine's explanations began collapsing under the weight of evidence. Millions witnessed it in real time. The broadcast ended badly, very badly. Public sympathy vanished almost overnight. Meanwhile, Brianna refused every request to respond. She never criticized Catherine publicly, never mocked her, never celebrated her embarrassment. Instead, she focused on construction. Workers moved through the colonial house daily. Electricians installed new systems. Painters transformed walls. Carpenters rebuilt damaged sections. The property slowly evolved into something entirely new. One afternoon, Brianna walked through the nearly completed building. Sunlight streamed through freshly cleaned windows. The air smelled like lumber and fresh paint. Workers exchanged greetings as she passed. For the first time, she could clearly imagine the finished project. Families occupying safe rooms, students receiving guidance, young adults rebuilding shattered lives. The vision felt real now, not an idea. A future. During that same period, Catherine's world continued shrinking. Legal fees consumed savings. Public opportunities disappeared. Social invitations stopped completely. Even casual interactions became uncomfortable. Neighbors recognized her. Strangers recognized her. People remembered the video. The interview only made matters worse. One evening, Tyler sat across from her inside their apartment. Rain tapped against the windows. The television remained silent. Neither seemed interested in conversation. Eventually, Tyler spoke. "Do you ever think about that day?" Catherine looked up. "What day?" "The day Brianna left." Silence followed. Long, heavy, uncomfortable. Tyler stared at the table. "I remember everything." Catherine said nothing. "I remember the garbage bag. Still nothing. I remember standing on the stairs." His voice weakened. "I should have said something." The confession lingered between them. For years, Tyler blamed everyone else. Now he finally confronted his own role. Small, passive, but real. Catherine looked away because deep inside she remembered too. Every word, every choice, every opportunity to do the right thing. Regret arrived late, but it arrived. Across town, Brianna spent the evening reviewing scholarship applications for a new educational fund connected to the foundation. The program would support young adults facing housing instability. Applications filled her desk. Stories filled her heart. Some applicants escaped abusive homes. Others aged out of foster care. Many simply needed one chance, one opportunity, one person willing to believe in them. As she read, she recognized pieces of her own journey. Different circumstances, same struggle. That realization strengthened her commitment. Weeks later, construction reached completion. Furniture arrived, technology systems activated, training rooms opened. Apartments welcomed their first residents. The transformation felt extraordinary. The house that once symbolized exclusion now represented inclusion. The place that once pushed someone out would soon invite people in. Community leaders toured the facility. Local organizations offered partnerships. Volunteers signed up. Momentum grew rapidly. Then something unexpected happened. A handwritten letter arrived. No return address, no organization logo, no explanation. Only Brianna's name written carefully across the envelope. She opened it during a quiet evening. Inside rested a single sheet of paper. The handwriting looked familiar. Very familiar. It belonged to Tyler. The letter was short, honest, painfully honest. He apologized. Not for Catherine, for himself, for remaining silent, for watching, for doing nothing, for allowing fear and comfort to outweigh courage. There were no excuses, no requests, no expectations, only accountability. At the bottom appeared one final sentence. I cannot change what I did, but I wanted you to know I finally understand what I should have done. Brianna folded the letter slowly. Then she looked through the office window toward the lights of the city. The apology did not erase history. It did not undo pain. But it mattered. Because genuine accountability always matters. She placed the letter inside a desk drawer, then returned to work. The grand opening of the Harold Foster Foundation was only days away. Hundreds planned to attend. Local media would be present, community leaders would speak. Everything was ready, or so she thought. Because less than 24 hours before the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Gerald called with unexpected news. News connected to Harold, news connected to the hidden trust, news connected to a final document nobody knew existed. And according to Gerald, it could change Brianna's understanding of her father forever. The call came just after sunset. Brianna stood alone inside the foundation's main hallway when her phone rang. Outside, spring rain drifted gently across Connecticut streets. Inside, warm lights illuminated freshly painted walls and newly furnished rooms. Everything was ready. The grand opening would begin the following morning. Then Gerald's name appeared on the screen. His voice sounded different. Emotional. Almost shaken. Brianna, I found something. The words immediately captured her attention. What kind of something? A final document. Silence followed. Her heartbeat quickened. Another trust document? No. Gerald paused. Something much more personal. The next morning, before guests arrived, Brianna met Gerald inside his office. Sunlight filtered through large windows. The city slowly awakened below. Gerald placed a weathered folder on the desk. This was hidden among archived records connected to your father's trust. Carefully, Brianna opened it. Inside sat several handwritten pages. The familiar handwriting immediately stopped her breath. Harold, her father. Unlike the letter she previously received, these pages were never intended for attorneys, never intended for courts, never intended for business. They were personal reflections, private thoughts. The words revealed a father trying to understand his own fears, his own mistakes, his own hopes. Page after page described Brianna, her intelligence, her determination, her kindness, her courage. Harold wrote about watching her explore houses as a little girl. He wrote about her sketchbooks, her dreams, her future. Then came a passage that brought tears to Brianna's eyes. If life becomes difficult for my daughter, I hope she never measures herself by what others give her. I hope she measures herself by what she builds. Because everything worth keeping comes from character. Brianna stopped reading. The room blurred. Years of grief suddenly felt lighter. Not gone, never gone, but lighter. Harold knew exactly who she was, exactly who she would become, and he believed in her completely. When she reached the final page, she discovered one last message. Simple, direct, powerful. If you are reading this, then I was right about you. You kept going. The tears finally came, not tears of sadness, tears of peace. For years, Brianna wondered what her father would think. Now she knew. Hours later, hundreds gathered outside the newly completed Harold Foster Foundation. Spring sunshine replaced the morning rain. Fresh grass swayed beneath a gentle breeze. Families filled the sidewalks. Community leaders arrived. Local reporters prepared cameras. Volunteers greeted guests. The atmosphere felt hopeful. alive. The colonial house looked completely transformed. Fresh paint covered every surface, flowers lined walkways. The restored fountain flowed with clear water. Nothing remained of the neglected property Catherine once controlled. Now it belonged to the community. Inside, training rooms waited for students, apartments waited for residents, resources waited for families, opportunity waited for anyone willing to work toward a better future. In the front row sat Loretta Barnes, older now, more fragile, but still smiling, still proud, still strong. When Brianna stepped to the podium, applause filled the air. She waited quietly until the crowd settled, then she began. She spoke about houses, not as investments, not as assets, not as status symbols, but as places where people learn their value, places where children discover belonging, places where families find safety, places where dreams begin. She spoke about community, responsibility, opportunity. She spoke about her father, his lessons, his integrity, his belief in people, yet she never mentioned Catherine, never mentioned lawsuits, never mentioned revenge, because the story had grown larger than pain, larger than betrayal, larger than loss. When the speech ended, Brianna stepped down from the stage and walked directly toward Loretta. She knelt beside the wheelchair. The crowd fell silent. "You gave me a home when nobody else would." Loretta smiled. "You earned everything that came after." The two women embraced. Many in the audience wiped away tears. Even reporters lowered cameras for a moment, because some moments deserve respect before documentation. As evening approached, guests gradually departed. Families settled into new apartments. Volunteers finished their work. The building finally grew quiet. Brianna walked alone through the hallways. Her footsteps echoed softly across polished floors. Eventually, she reached the small room where she once packed a garbage bag. The room looked completely different now. Bookshelves lined the walls, desks filled the space. Warm lighting created comfort. Young people would study there, dream there, plan futures there. The cycle had been broken. She removed her childhood sketchbook from a shelf. The first page displayed a simple crayon drawing, a house. The final page displayed 3 words written years earlier inside a taxi. "I will return." Slowly, Brianna smiled. She had returned, not to reclaim revenge, not to reclaim status, not to reclaim the past. She returned to build something better. Outside, stars appeared above Connecticut. The foundation's lights glowed warmly against the evening sky. People inside slept safely, others prepared for new beginnings. And somewhere beyond memory, Brianna believed her father would be smiling. Because the greatest victory was never getting the house back. The greatest victory was becoming the kind of person who could transform pain into purpose. That kind of success cannot be inherited, it cannot be stolen, it cannot be purchased. It must be built, just like Harold always knew she would. Subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, your viewing location, and share this video.